Hello, everyone. This is George. Here's the second part of my analysis regarding this article recently published by Eurogamer. This article focuses on Assassin's Creed Shadows' backlash, and it particularly centers around the words and thoughts by Assassin's Creed franchise boss Mark Alexis Cote. So let's get going. Let's continue. Cote mentions that including diverse and inclusive characters is a new ground for the franchise. From Altair to Aveline to Raton Akhenaton, we've consistently introduced protagonists from diverse racial, ethnic, and gender identities. History, he says, is inherently diverse, and so is Assassin's Creed and the stories we tell. I want to stop over there just for a moment. I find it really interesting that he mentions Altair, he mentions Aveline, he mentions Raton Akhenaton, also known as Connor, but for some reason, he forgets about Ezio. And it's clear to us that these AAA game companies, they want to raise any mention to Western history and Western civilization. They don't want us to consider heroes such as Ezio as figures that we can look upon and who can inspire us. That's the reason why I think that individuals such as Cote are trying to desperately push an agenda that is highly destructive to Western civilization. And I mention Western civilization, perhaps you may think we're just talking about games. Games are relatively innocuous, they are harmful. But something that I really want to emphasize is that games are cultural artifacts. They are products that enable us to immerse ourselves in different settings and different stories. And as you already know, the stories are incredibly powerful. So, games have been used as political platforms to send messages that comply to certain agendas. And in this case, one of the agendas, or perhaps the main agenda here, is to erase Western civilization and rewrite history. And of course, we as gamers won't let these companies get away with it. So, moving on, I find this article, again, interesting because the author mentions, goes and makes a reference to the words of Yves Guillemot, which is Ubisoft CEO. And Guillemot, a couple of months ago, he condemned the malicious and personal online attacks directed at Shadow's development team in the wake of the game's reveal. Guillemot is playing victim here, and again, forgetting about things that happened. He forgets about the fact that SBI, or Sweet Baby Inc., went after a gamer, in this case, Cabrutus. He doesn't mention that. He only mentions his side. He's only playing victim, but he doesn't realize that former Ubisoft employees founded Sweet Baby Inc., a DEI consulting company that went after a gamer. Now, just to wrap this up, I'll just keep moving. You can obviously take a look at this article. And the way that Kotek closes all of this, it's frankly striking. Let me start reading this. He says, "Today the stakes are higher. The stories we tell, the characters we create, and the game worlds we build are instrumentalized by those who seek to silence creativity, to stoke fear, and incite hatred. So that means, if you do not agree with what Ubisoft is doing, that means you are inciting hatred. Moving on. Cote says, I believe we are facing what author Farid Zakaria calls an age of revolution, a time when the real conflict is not between the left and the right, but between societies that close themselves off and those that open themselves up to the world. Throughout history, it's the open societies that have always eventually prevailed. While there may be setbacks over years or even decades, it is openness that has continually pushed humanity forward. He's talking about openness. This is incredible. This is all of this is virtual signaling. He talks about openness, but if we gamers dare to criticize what Ubisoft is doing wrong, then that means that we are inciting hatred and we are closed to all this propaganda that they are providing. And you know what? Something that angers me, it's the fact that these game companies are not respectful to gamers. They want us to be just mere consumers while we are actually customers. And we have the power. We can vote. We can vote with our wallets. And the fact that this guy, we're not talking about any guy. This is not like Concord's dev who called gamers, or artists who called gamers talentless freaks. We're talking about the boss of the Assassin's Creed franchise. We're talking about an executive here. And these executives have to be really careful about the language they're using, because they are labeling gamers who are the ones who build these franchises, who are the ones who have been loyal to Assassin's Creed, and this guy is painting us as people who want to stoke fear and incite hatred. This is nuts. That is the reason why many of these companies have eroded all the trust that we gamers once gave them. And trust never comes free. Trust has to be earned. And moving on, I'm about to close all of this. He says, this echoes the selfless bravery of our Assassin's Creed protagonists. He continued. They fought for freedom, knowledge, and the right to chart their own paths, just as we creators fight to tell stories that matter in a world that grows increasingly divided. As the authors of How Democracies Die so powerfully stated, democracies crumble when good people decide to stay silent. The same is true, I think, of our creative freedom when we allow fear to stifle our voices. When we self censor in the face of threats, we hand over our power. Look at this. I'm already getting lost by reading all of this. Honestly, the guy was talking about a game, Assassin's Creed Shadows, who's a game that is facing backlash. And honestly, it is well earned backlash because of the way that Ubisoft has treated gamers. And then he starts to go in, and then Cote starts going in this whole rant about freedom and knowledge and the right to chart our own paths and how democracy is like, man, you're an activist. You are not a gamer. You are not a gamer who respects fellow gamers. You are not a gamer who is aware of the fact that gamers just want to have fun. And the way that you conclude is just incredible. Cote says, to our players, the ones who have stood by us, supported us, and celebrated our work over the years with enthusiasm and constructive feedback, something that you don't want, by the way, this stance is for you. You are the heart of our journey. We create for you, and your support fuels our creativity and it strengthens our resolve to keep pushing boundaries, to tell stories that matter. This journey is yours. Just look at all of this. The guy already bored me. This is not the way. I mean, it's clear to me that this article or this piece was perhaps paid by Ubisoft. I don't have any evidence on that. I'm just assuming things here based on we know how legacy media works. And if this is some sort of apology or if this is some sort of message that you're trying to send gamers, you're doing this terribly, terribly, terribly wrong. You are not humble. You are not being humble. You are not being respectful to gamers. And honestly, your game, Assassin's Creed Shadows, deserves to fail. Gamers, let's keep voting with our wallets. Thank you all.